Welcome to episode 6 of the Credit Card BS podcast. My name is Sean. I'm the UC Berkeley graduate that created and taught the university-sponsored course on credit card rewards. I'm here today with my co-host, Sherwin.
Hey there, I'm Sherwin. I attend Stanford University. I got into this credit card and travel points and miles game a bit over a year ago. And since then, I've opened a lot of cards, amassed millions of points, and gone on a lot of cool trips with my family. This podcast is called the Credit Card BS podcast because BN and S reflect the schools that Sean and I go to respectively, Berkeley and Stanford. But as usual, we've decided to put away our differences for today to talk about credit cards. Today's topic: does the Chase 524 rule matter? Should you care about it? I'll first begin by talking about what the Chase 524 rule is. Chase has an application approval rule where if on your credit report you have opened 5 or more credit cards from any issuers in the last 24 months, you will automatically be denied for any Chase card. Now, keep in mind that Chase only pulls your personal credit report. So any business credit cards you opened with Chase or with other issuers that don't report to your credit report will now count toward your 524 status. However, any business cards you try to open with Chase will be subject to the 524 rule in order for you to get approved.
Yes, and we should be also careful here. So there have been data points of people getting approved while, having more credit cards open in the past 24 months. So it can vary depending on the person, but as a general rule, you cannot get it past 5 cards in 24 months. And to be very clear about how we're defining this, a lot of people define this incorrectly. So when we say 5 credit cards that you've opened in the past 24 months, all that matters if it's on your credit report. If it's not on your credit report, it doesn't exist for the purposes of Chase. So if I go and open the Capital One Venture X today, and I open 6 other cards today, and if they're not on my credit report yet, my 524 status is still unaffected. So I can still get Chase cards. Now, the inquiries I get usually immediately show up on the report, but the actual cards themselves can take a couple days to a couple weeks, or in Amex's case, up to 2 months to show up on my report. So if it's not on my report, it doesn't exist.
Yes, and it is 5 new accounts, not 5 inquiries. So inquiries usually are not relevant to the Chase approval criteria as long as it's not overly excessive. So why are we talking about this rule? Now, when I talk to people about credit cards and credit card strategy, and one of the first things I always mention is this 524 rule because it really affects how you should um, strategize your opening moves, so to speak, when you're starting out in this game. And I tell people, you can't open more than 5 credit cards in the last 24 months, or Chase won't approve you. And they say, that's pretty much irrelevant to me because there's no way I'm going to open a 5 or more cards in the last in 2 years, right? And I say, that's what you may think, but once you're in this game, you're gonna try to jump on the sign up bonuses every few months. And 5 cards in 2 years is actually quite limiting, especially since it's 5 cards from any issuer, 5 personal cards from any issuer, not just Chase. What do you think, Sean?
I agree. I think, yeah, a lot of people don't take the rule as seriously as they need to because, yeah, like that's a very limiting amount. Like I don't even know how many cards I opened in my first 2 years, but it was probably like 15 plus. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very limiting rule. So you do need to make sure you're planning your strategy around this rule, especially as you're starting out. As you get more advanced into the game, it can matter less because the key thing is to get the core important chase cards that you need. Like, yeah. So you need
Yes.
to really be strategizing for it.
Yeah, I'll just give an example, right? Let's say you are at 424. So you've opened 4 cards in the last 24 months and you're deciding what card you want to get for the fifth one. Okay. And I have had friends be like, okay, I'll go open the Apple card because it's titanium and it's cool and it's shiny and I have an iPhone. So it works well. And great, you got a $75 Nike gift card as your sign up bonus. And as a result, you locked yourself out of Chase for at least 2 years, you know. Whereas if, for that, when you're at 4 of 24, you had opened, the Chase Sapphire Preferred and gotten a 60,000 point sign up bonus. That bonus is worth at least $1,000, if not more. And then after you're at 524, then sure, go for the Apple card or whatever other cards, other issuers. But, by timing those applications correctly and doing it in the correct order, you're able to take advantage of both the Chase cards and the other issuers. But if you kind of fill up all those slots with other issuers up front, you're going to be locked out of Chase for quite a while and you're going to miss out on some really good sign up bonuses. So, one thing with planning out credit card strategy is always, take your time, do all the research, don't be too impulsive and open a bunch of shiny cards because they seem cool or have cool perks, but lock yourself out of Chase for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And especially like in the example you gave, if you were at 424, that 424 particularly is like where the opportunity cost is most. So if you are opening issuer cards from other issuers, then you're fully locking yourself out at 424 because that's the time at 424 is the time to grind inks. That's the time you just keep opening Chase Ink business cards, getting those 75,000 point minimum sign up offers, no annual fee cards, and you should just ride that train as long as you can because that is a sweet, sweet spot to be in.
Yeah, and if you're interested in one of those cards, please use one of our links in the description below. It'd greatly help us out.
That would
Um,
help. Yeah, that would help us out a ton.
yeah, so now that we kind of know what the 524 status is, I kind of want to give what I believe is the optimal opening strategy for beginners. And then, Sean, I'll have you give your thoughts after I share what I think you should do. So your first card should always be a starter card. Chase generally will not approve you without any credit history, so you're gonna have to go to a different issuer, and it's totally fine. So, Discover has really good cards, both secured and unsecured. Solid student card. Bank of America also has decent student cards for those people who like to, who bank with them. What card you get for your first one is really not that important. Some people spend way too much time agonizing for what their first card should be, and they end up losing out valuable time in the credit card game. So just get something you're able to be approved for. So once you have that first card, you want to wait 1 year until that. So basically, you want to wait 1 year so that that card has been open for at least 365 days. Only then will you be eligible for Chase cards. And you need 1 year of non authorized user history. So it needs to be your own account. So just because your parents added you to a card that has much longer will not help for the purpose of this rule because Chase will not approve you unless you have 1 year of credit history. Now, there is an exception where, like, if you bank with Chase and have a lot of money in there, you could get around the 1 year limitation, but you would have to like apply and then you would get denied and you call reconsideration and tell them you have money. But in general, wait 1 year after your first card. Then for your second card, you want to open the Chase Freedom Flex or the Chase Freedom Unlimited cards. The reason is, they have decent sign up bonus, usually 20,000 points plus some other category bonus. And these are going to be your foundation, right? Even though they are marketed as cashback cards, they earn ultimate rewards points, which can be transferred to travel partners like airlines and hotels later down the road that can unlock a lot more value. Then now here's where things get interesting. So you have two cards, one from the other issuer and one Chase Freedom Flex or Unlimited. Then between cards 3 and 5, you basically have 3 slots to fill up with Chase cards. However, keep in mind that now is also the time to start applying for business cards. Business cards are so great because on subject, except for a few issuers, they generally don't report to your credit report. So for Chase business cards, they're subject to 524, but they don't add to your 524, right? So I could do these two cards. I can apply for, theoretically 4 different Chase business cards, and I'd still be at 224 and have 3 more personal slots. So then you kind of want to alternate between business cards and personal card applications. I highly recommend the Chase e-cards, links in the description below, because they earn ultimate rewards points, which can be transferred out to travel partners. And they have huge sign up bonuses. Here, you also want to consider some hotel keeper cards. So the World of Hyatt card is great. It gives you a free night certificate each year. A Marriott Bonvoy Boundless sometimes has good sign up bonus if it's like 3 to 5 free night certificates after you do the minimum spend. I also like the IHG Premier card. We did a whole episode on IHG in episode 1. You should check that out. So you want to alternate between business cards and hotel keeper or airline cards. You also want to get at least one card where you can transfer points out to travel partners from the Ultimate Rewards ecosystem. So that would be either the Chase Sapphire Preferred, Chase Sapphire Reserve, or on the business side, Chase Ink Preferred. I think the Chase Sapphire Preferred is a solid option for people who are starting out because it only has a $95 annual fee. You can downgrade after 1 year, if it's not right for you. So it's low commitment, low annual fee. The sign up bonuses easily makes up for the annual fee. You can and it unlocks travel partners, but it does take away one of those 524 slots. So my personal opinion is to go for the Chase Ink Preferred while you're under 524 because it's a business card, so it won't add to your 524 status while still allowing you to transfer to travel partners. And I talk more about this in episode 2 of the podcast. So go check that out. So once you have cards 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you're at 524. Then I would say go wild, go open cards from other issuers like Citi, Capital One, American Express. But you want to get the chase cards early and first while you're under 524 before you move on. So yeah, Sean, what do you think?
I think it's over a very solid strategy. I think I agree with you on most points there. In terms of what I would specifically do, if I could design any kind of beginner plan. So let's say someone is, about to turn 18 or they just turned 18. So step one, if you have family that has old credit card accounts, have them take their oldest account that they have, assuming it's a non-Amex account, because Amex, it won't work for this, but you take the oldest account that they have and add you as an authorized user. If they have multiple accounts that are over like 10 years, add a bunch. Okay. It's the oldest accounts possible. Cannot be Amex though, because Amex doesn't backdate the account open date. Like the date that you're added is the date the account aged is. So that's step one. So that will build super strong authorized user history. Now that doesn't matter that much, but take it if you can get it. Then the day you turn 18, and if you're already past 18, then literally today, that's when you should open your first card, because the sooner you open it, the sooner the clock starts running. Now, you said to go for like a Discover Bank of America starter card first. I would agree with that for the most part. I think there is one exception. If you want to be a bit of a baller and play it a little bit more aggressively, if you have a good amount of money with Chase, if you bank with Chase prior to when you're 18, or maybe even now if you throw some money in there, you can get a Chase card as your first credit card. It's difficult, but achievable. And especially as you're starting out, it might be worth an attempt. So if you could put some money in Chase, a couple $1,000s in a Chase bank account, I would personally try to go for the Chase Freedom Flex, something like that, and try to, you're probably going to get denied, but if you have a good amount of money in there and you have strong authorized user history, you can probably get them to approve that. So the reason that would be so nice is that that's not a wasted slot anymore, because your first starter card's kind of a wasted slot. You'll never use it past the beginning. But if you get a Chase card first, you'll use that, you're simultaneously not only building credit history, but you're building a Chase relationship at the same time. So that means when you go for your next Chase card, it will be significantly easier. So that's what I
Just
would do
wanted
for your
to
first
add
card.
I just wanted to add there is a Chase Freedom student card. Uh, and that one's easier to get approved for if you're a student, and it's a good starter card. It only earns 1x points on everything, so it's not that strong a start, but it does earn ultimate rewards points that you can save for later. And later down the road, maybe after a year or something, you're able to product change it to one of the freedom cards, which will be more useful. So that's an option you can consider if um, you want to be approved a little more easily.
That's a very good point. And I would still take that option over probably a Discover or Bank of America card, just because since you're not wasting the 524 slot. If you
Well,
can
I
get the
actually
Freedom
disagree because I think that Discover 5% rotating categories is more useful than like the 1% back on the Chase Freedom student. I think to me, it's fine to just get the Freedom as your second card instead of
I
the
think it
first.
depends, because for the Discover, you are getting those rotating categories. But for me personally, I never use my Discover card ever anymore. So like in the short term, yes, you would be yielding more rewards. But as a part of a long term, I think I would, because unless you're spending, if you were maxing out the categories, then I'll concede that point. But if you're not going to be maxing it out, then I feel like the Chase relationship would be more valuable. But either way, from there, whatever you do as your starter, then there's two ways you could play it. So if you want to play it a little more aggressively, at 6 months, you could go for an Amex card. And this is something that could be controversial. But the reason it could be beneficial to get an Amex card early on, if there's a couple caveats here, but if you do get it early on, Amex only does a hard inquiry for your first credit card that you have with them. And so it's kind of nice to get that out of the way. Every subsequent card you get with Amex, they will not run a hard inquiry. And with Amex's apply with confidence feature now, you only receive a hard inquiry on your first card if you're approved. So there's no risk in attempting the Amex card. And the reason it can be good is once you get an Amex card, you're then would be much more likely to be eligible for Amex business cards, which not only don't show up on your credit report, but don't give you a hard inquiry at all. So they're free money sitting on the table. And that's what I did. Now, it depends on, again, how aggressively you want to play. And the big caveat here is if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you have the spend to support it. Because if you get an Amex card and then just reach the bonus and then never spend on it, you're going to be put in something called pop-up jail, which will prevent you from getting future Amex sign-up bonuses, at least temporarily. And so you would need to be able to make sure you have the spend to support it. I think a good option would be like the Amex Gold or something as a kind of a starter Amex card, or if you can really swing at the Amex Platinum. But the Gold, even for most people, is pretty easy to justify. And then from there, I think I pretty much agree with your strategy of once you hit the 1 year mark, I would say, if you did my strategy of getting a Chase card first and you've already had a year of Chase history, you could pretty easily go for, I don't know if I want to say you can go for inks. I think it depends. If you could get approved, I feel like the ink preferred would then be the strategy there. Now, keep in mind, you have to spend $15,000 in 3 months of getting the card to reach that bonus. So that's really tough. If you can't reach that, then the Sapphire Preferred is the best because it's the easiest to get approved for. It's the easiest to reach the bonus for. Or I think the bonus actually spending is the same, but it's the easiest to get approved for sure. So that's what I would recommend because it'd be nice to have the card that can transfer the points out early on because otherwise you'll be kind of sitting with all these chase points you can't do anything with. And then from there, I think 100% agree. Go for the hotel keeper cards like the IHG Premier, like the World of Hyatt, maybe the Marriott. Marriott's a little bit of a weird one because they have that rule where if you get the cards on the Chase side, you can't get the bonus on the Amex side. So you have to like pick one side to go for. And in my view, I feel like the Amex side's overall better on the Marriott side just because you have the Brilliant card, which gives you platinum status, and you have the business card, which adds the elite qualifying nights. But that's up to you. But so the World of Hyatt card, IHG card for sure. And then farm the ink cards for as long as you probably can because those are just such good offers. And if you're especially if you're bouncing back between you and a player two, each time that you use a player two's referral link, you'll get the person that has the link gets 40,000 chase points, which is insane. That is an absurdly high referral bonus. By the way, check out our links in the description. But if you have a player two's link, use theirs because 40,000 points is a huge, huge bonus. I mean, that's more than double that is double the bonus of the Freedom Unlimited, for example, or the Freedom Flex. And so from there, I agree with your strategy. Focus on the inks. Long term, do whatever you want. The only thing is maybe consider, we'll talk about this in a second actually, but there's other issuers you'll have to consider a few things about as well before you start getting too many credit cards.
I just want to ask you, did you really think that using an Amex card as one of the 524 slots early on was worth giving up that slot for another Chase card you could have gotten?
I think it depends. So in my case, it kind of worked out a little bit for a couple reasons. One, because keep in mind when you're starting out with your history, you can't get that many cards because you just don't have enough history, right? So like even if I wanted to get more, like there's only so many chase cards you can get within your first 2 years, for example, right? I mean, the most you could probably get if you're really playing aggressively, what would you say, 4 cards
Oh,
in
if
the
I'm
first 2
including
years?
business cards, 7, 8,
I-
maybe.
If you're playing it that aggressively, I guess. If Chase, I mean, if you're really, I guess it depends on like what your history with them looks like. If you're not getting your first Chase card though until year 1, then no, I would no way it would be 7, 8. It would be like 3, 4 maybe. Depending on how
Yeah,
risk
what
tolerant
I
you are.
personally did was I had a card from another issuer, but before that hit 1 year, I put in some money into a Chase checking account, applied for the Chase Freedom Flex, got denied, called a recon, and because I had some money in there, they approved me for a $500 credit limit, which is really sad, but it got my foot in the door. And then shortly after, I was able to apply for a lot more Chase cards. So that worked out for me.
Awesome. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think, but in terms of using the Amex card slot, in my case, it ended up working out because it was the no annual fee Hilton Honors card, which I then later upgraded into my second Aspire, which is
Mm.
very nice because to upgrade the card, right, you have to wait a year clock at least. So it ended up kind of working out for me there. it depends. I think it depends on which Amex card you're gonna go for. I think it depends on what velocity you wanna do. But I think if you're playing it where like, okay, your first card's a chase card, your second card's an Amex card, and your next 3 plus cards, 3 personal cards are chase, I think that's fine because by the time you're able to get all those cards, all those chase cards where you're like, especially if you're throwing in business cards in the middle there, that first chase card you got at the very beginning of the clock is probably already going to be going off, right? It's going to be ending. And the same thing with the Amex card, right? Because the earlier you start the clock, the earlier the clock finishes. So if I get that Amex card early on,
Yeah.
the sooner it goes off my report, if that makes sense. And because it's easy to get the Amex cards is the idea why there.
Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest regrets is not opening that first card when I was 18. I opened it when I was 19. So I actually
Same.
lost out on a lot of sign-up bonuses during like that period of time from Chase because I just wasn't eligible. Oh, one thing that's interesting is Amex will like literally approve you as long as you don't have like bad credit, even if you don't have 1 year of credit history or something. Like it can actually in some cases be easier to get the Amex Platinum than a Chase Freedom or a Sapphire card, ironically. So something to keep in mind. I think a common misconception is that people think they're high tier cards, so they're hard to get approved for, but that's actually not necessarily the case.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's like a potato could get an Amex card. It is so easy. As long as you
Yeah.
don't make Amex mad, it's like not an issue at all.
Yeah. So I actually have a slightly different take than Sean on the American Express strategy that I kind of want to talk about and get your thoughts on. So, in my opinion, you should not go for Amex unless you have a very strong reason to too early. And there's a couple reasons why. First is that Amex does not have as good of downgrade options as does Chase. So if you're, just getting your toes in the water on the credit card game, and you're trying to commit to a gold or platinum card, uh, the the most you can downgrade to is like the green card, which is $150 annual fee. You can't downgrade to something that's no annual fee other than to cancel it altogether. Whereas with Chase, whether it's the Ink Preferred or the Sapphire Preferred or the Sapphire Reserve, you can downgrade those to no annual fee freedoms or inks really easily and without, pissing off Chase too much. The other issue is, the pop up problem. As Sean mentioned, if you open the card, hit the sign up bonus, and then don't really consistently spend on Amex cards, they will view you as a non profitable customer and sort of gray list you. Where in the future, it's really hard to be eligible for any sign up bonuses because when you apply, there'll be a pop up telling you that you're not eligible. And the only way to get out of it is to put massive spend on Amex cards. And that's kind of a headache. So if you have high spend now and you think you will put that on Amex cards, go for it. But if you're like a student or you're young, you're just starting out, you don't think you're gonna have high spend, I would probably recommend waiting off on Amex until later on when you have higher spend. So you don't find yourself getting gray listed because that can be really frustrating and lock you out of a lot of value. And the other consideration I think is that Amex tends to only give like the highest sign up offer on the platinum card to entirely new customers, like customers who've never had any Amex cards before. So, and the platinum card can be hard to justify early on in your credit card setup if you're just getting started in the game. So you might go for a different Amex card, but then that might preclude the algorithm from giving you the best offer for the platinum card in the future. So my strategy would be not to really touch Amex until you're ready to open the platinum card as your first card. I don't know. What do you think, Sean?
So I think there's two main counters I have. So for the spending issue, I will agree that is a major issue if you're not able to reach the spending. I think the solution to that, if you can justify a card like the gold card, which again I think is pretty easy for most people to justify, is that if you get a workhorse card like the gold, you're going to be likely spending on it anyways, and it doesn't have to be that much spend. Like even like $100 a month on groceries and restaurants would likely be enough to keep you out of pop up jail. So I feel
So
like
what card would you recommend for that
the gold,
grocery spend? Yeah, but
the
that still
Amex
has a
gold.
250 annual fee. So, it can be harder to justify for a beginner.
It can't. I think it's still fairly easy to justify when you look at the credits. Now, again, I'm designing this as like a fully if you're playing this to the max strategy. So for the average person, right, they're probably not going to open a Chase Freedom Unlimited the day they turn 18 and put a couple $1,000s in their Chase account
Yeah,
prior. But if you want to play it like to the max, to the optimal strategy, that's what I may argue. So
sure.
I think that's how you could get around the spending issue. And then for the platinum card, like them not giving you the highest offer, that was, it seems to me to be more of an issue in the past. But now it seems a lot of their high offers, like the platinum 150K offer or like the 150K plus $200 statement credit offer, you can get via certain referral links. And it seems not too difficult to find those links anymore. And so they're not, they still try to they'll still target you more likely with, if you're like, not a customer yet, but if you're looking on certain referral links or and stuff, it's not too difficult to find. Like I'm pretty sure my player two's referral link from the business plus card, the blue business plus, gives both the 150K platinum offer and the 90K gold offer plus the $200 statement credit on each. Or that was the case like a month ago. I'll check that. But so it's not too difficult to get those higher offers, but again, they could reverse it at any time in the future, and it could become difficult again. Um, but
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
I mean, that's good to know. I think there's so many factors. It's hard to say what's the best strategy for each person. I will say the other thing one should know is that with Chase points, you can cash them out 1 cent per point. If you decide not to, you know, put in the work to do all those transfer partners or whatever. With Amex, it's much harder unless you have the Schwab Platinum. You can really only redeem for statement credit 0.6 cents per point or 0.7, which is pretty garbage. Um, the only really good value you can get from it is to transfer to travel partners, which requires more work and it has a steeper learning curve. But it's the way that Sean and I prefer to use our points because it unlocks more value. But as a beginner, if that is not something you're sure you're going to do, Chase might be a better option since you have the opportunity to cash them out at like a more reasonable value. What do you think?
I think that's true. I think it depends on how you think you're going to play the strategy. For me, cashback doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. So I will never cash out my points. The only exception I would say if I was ever going to cash them out is if there was for some reason, was going to buy points and it would be cheaper to cash them out. So for example, it is so stupid to transfer your points to IHG points from Chase because you can just buy the IHG points for half the cost of transferring. And so you could just cash out the Chase points and buy IHG points with that money. Now I wouldn't do that, but if I guess my other point is the only time I would cash it out is like, okay, if I needed to transfer to some currency and I'm like, wait a second, I can just buy the points for cheaper than it is to transfer them out.
Yeah, I just have one final point, and is that like Amex is not really that sensitive to your velocity, as in like how quickly you're opening cards from other issuers. So I think there's also another argument that after Chase, you should go to some of the other issuers that are more sensitive before going to Amex, because Amex will always approve you as long as you have solid credit. Whereas, for example, Citi, you know, they can choose not to approve you if you have too many cards in the last 6 months. Capital One has a mysterious algorithm nobody knows. I think sometimes they won't approve people that they deem non-profitable if you've opened too many cards. Barclays can be pretty inquiry sensitive. They have an unofficial 624 rule, so you might have to get their cards a bit earlier. And the Barclays 624 rule is weird because unlike Chase, they count Barclays business cards in that count. So
They
do
do
keep that
count
in mind.
Barclays business cards? I was not aware of
They
that.
are able I think they are able to see the business cards that you open at Barclays, right? Because it's your own bank, even though it's not on your credit
Yeah.
report. Whereas Chase is more strictly what's on your credit report, even if you have Chase business cards. So that's something to
I
keep in mind
I have to go look at my history of Barclays approvals because if I may have been over 624 if you count the business cards.
from
So
Barclays.
I've on Barclays, yeah, because I'll have to
Okay.
go double check that, but I'm not sure
It's
because I
also
remember being
not
close to
as
524.
yeah, also unlike Chase, it's not a hard line rule. It's more a guideline, I think. So take that what you will. And then US Bank is also pretty sensitive to applications in the last year. So, in my opinion, it can be if assuming you want to play all your cards and eventually go to all of the issuers, I would do Chase first and then, Citi, Capital One, Barclays, US Bank before going to Amex. But, that's just my opinion. I think there may be good reason to open Amex card earlier, but just keep in mind you may be giving up some of the opportunities for the other issuers that are more sensitive to velocity or application.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason, like, why I was gonna say if you go for the Amex card, if you're going to do it as part of your early strategy, get it very early is my strategy. Because if you get it like 6 months after you start, that's not going to impact you that much. Because right by the time you're below 524 again, or by the time you've reached that 2 years of history, the Amex card's almost off of your report. So if you get it like right after Chase, yeah, that's a bad idea because once you finish Chase, if you're gonna go directly for Amex, then you have to wait like a whole 2 years for it to go off. But if you just do it at the very beginning, then it will fall off your 2 year you're rolling 2 years much quicker. And yeah, I agree. I think a lot of these other issuers can be pickier, especially with Capital One and Citi. I still don't have any of their cards, and now I don't necessarily think that's because I have too many cards outright. It's a lot of it is my velocity because I'm I don't even know 1524 at this point, so there's not really a way I'm going to get those cards anytime soon. Even my player two though, who has a Citi bank account with some money in it and pretty low velocity, was just denied for the City Premier, and I have to call Recon to see.
Um, I think it really
Which, yeah,
depends. I think they're more sensitive with the Premier, but like the custom cash, for example, they're a bit easier on approval.
I could see that. Yeah, I just want the Premier because I want that Turkish transfer, and I want that or the Choice Hotels 1 to 2. That would be nice.
And Wyndham too.
They transferred to Wyndham on City,
Yeah, City transfers 1-to-1 to Wyndham.
but I mean, I would never transfer to Wyndham still because you can buy the points for less than a cent a piece.
That's true. There, we had this conversation. Sorry, it's a bit off topic, but on the Discord the other day, where someone's like, "I need to transfer my Amex points to Choice 101." I'm like, "Why would you do that? You should just buy the points when they're on sale for less than 1 cent per point." But anyway, uh, the one last thing I just want to add before we wrap up is that the Chase Amazon card is not subject to 524, I believe. So you can get that later on. And as a result, I would not consider using one of your 524 slots for that particular card.
Definitely, yeah, and it seems to be like varied on like if it's a co-branded card or a core card. Some of the core cards they're stricter on the 524. Some of the co-branded ones they're more loose about it, depending
Yeah.
on the co-branded card and stuff like that. But yeah,
I also, in
it's
general, don't think the Chase Amazon card is that worth it because even though it gives you 5% back on Amazon, my strategy has just been to go to grocery stores when like the Freedom Flex earns 5x on them that quarter to buy Amazon gift cards. And then I'm earning 5x ultimate rewards points instead of 5% cash back, which is more valuable, strictly speaking.
definitely. And there's also even if you wanted the 5x, the 5% back, there's an Amex business card that has the same ability. And because it's a business card, it doesn't show up on your credit report. It doesn't contribute to your 524. And so that's what I'd probably recommend for most people. Unless, of course, because Amex does have the limit of you can only have 5 credit cards with them at any given time. So it would contribute to that, which is why I ended up actually canceling that card, which is, seems silly to cancel a no annual fee business card, but I was at my Amex card limit. So that was my only option.
Yeah, you got to get all the Aspires.
Exactly. 4 or 5 aspires is the goal.
We should do a whole episode. Actually, might be the next episode.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you want to cover?
I think that's everything for today. Did you have anything else?
Sounds good. I think we should do our outro.
Awesome. So if you've enjoyed today's episode and you want to support the podcast and the channel, please consider using our affiliate links. We already plugged them a few times, but it does help us out immensely. Like you have no idea how much it helps. And yeah, if you want to join also a community of like-minded award travelers, consider the Travel Lane Discord server, link in the description. Very smart people in there dropping awesome deal alerts, including $30 a night hotel suites that sell for $1,000 a night, including award dumps on very rare airlines like Eva Air and Asiana. Thank you, Revington. And there are some, amazing people in there. You will learn so much. So consider that.
Yes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give this video a like. It'll really help out with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much and see you next week.